What's up? Welcome back to Cryptographics. Today, we're going over 3 strategies to maximize gains between Ethereum Hex and PulseChain Hex. So let's get right into it. So Hex is the blockchain's closest asset to a certificate of deposit. And this video is not intended to be a crash course on Hex. Check out my video about the T-share. I think it's called You Need to Know This About the T-share. For that explanation, we're just going to assume you know. If you don't know, check that out, then come back before going to this. Otherwise, you won't understand why we're talking about Hex specifically. So Hex will work exactly the same on both chains. The only differences are how the users of each chain will interact with the protocol, as well as how the chain allows users to interact with the protocols. So what I mean by that is on each chain, the protocol itself, Hex, functions both normally, but gas fees, transaction times, processing speeds, however the chain operates is going to be different from chain to chain. That's the only difference, is how the chain interacts with Hex itself on either chain. So let's keep going. So the current situation in Hex is 43% of Ethereum Hex's supply is in the PulseX sacrifice wallet, meaning people sacrificed Hex. 43% of all Hex has been sacrificed, and some of it, I believe, was already in the PulseChain wallet and it was moved into the sacrifice wallet. So between the two sacrifices, now 43% of Ethereum's Hex is in that wallet. 17% of the supply is in the OA wallet. None has ever been sold from either the Ethereum Hex or from the PulseX sacrifice or the OA. The OA has only moved Hex into the sacrifice wallet, and neither have sold between them. 9.682, so almost 10% of Hex, of total Hex supply, is staked at the moment. So this brings the total, essentially, the total of Hex off the market at the moment to 70% roughly. That leaves 0.0246% of the circulating Hex is currently available for purchase in Uniswap v3 for a total of 142,624,280 Hex roughly. So everything that the numbers that I didn't mention are what people hold. So there's 70%. That means like 99.9734 are holding, or is taken, is you cannot buy. So there's such a small amount of Hex available. And we're only sitting at 287,298 holders. The reason why this is important is because all of this is going to get copied over to the Pulse chain. So what is the best solution? Hold only Ethereum Hex, we're going to call it eHEX, or PulseChain Hex, which is we'll just call Hex, or both. And how can we utilize the two chains to maybe complement each other? So, like I said, the good news is if you already own Hex on Ethereum, you will get a copy of that on the Pulse chain at a 1-to-1 ratio. Meaning, if you own 100 Hex on Ethereum, you will get airdropped 100 Hex on Pulse chain. But now what? Do we keep both or migrate to one chain? Let's look at some reasons why keeping the Ethereum Hex on Ethereum may be a good idea, both long-term and short-term. So, eHEX. When Pulse chain goes live, people may react quite quickly and move to PulseChain the moment it's live. Some may emergency end stake to bridge their Hex from PulseChain, from Ethereum to PulseChain immediately. And this is a massive opportunity for the payout per T-share to increase dramatically, either temporarily or possibly even longer term. Depends on how it plays out. Only those who are staked, though, will get that payout, and those who are holding liquid Hex will get nothing. Even if the whole thing happens and you're sitting there and you're still on Ethereum, you get none of it. Only the people that stake. And the people who are staked the longest will get the most. So even in addition to this, for players who are not phased out by gas fees on Ethereum, they will likely gobble up any cheap Hex that comes on the market. So if people are smaller players and they just want to get off Ethereum because of the fees and everything, they want to jump ship, the people who aren't affected by it are the ones who are probably going to gobble it up. Because this is a massive opportunity for anyone that wants to increase their position in Hex, as it is unlikely that this is going to happen on PulseChain. The Hex system still functions the exact same, regardless of which chain you're on. The only difference is the fees. And it's important that you know this because the big players who aren't affected by the fees, or players who are just you're just big enough where they don't have to worry about the fees, you can take advantage of both systems, right? And we're going to talk about that and get into that more. So let's talk about one more thing on the topic of eHEX as well. We do not know how knowledgeable users will become of PulseChain in the future due to potential continued gatekeeping. I mean, that could be continued gatekeeping or how much will filter in from lack of gatekeeping. It depends on how it plays out. So this may not inhibit PulseChain's growth necessarily, and also may keep demand for eHEX for those who do find Hex. Maybe some people just hear about Hex and they don't know about the community. They just stumble across it and they just like the way it sounds, don't realize there's a second one, and they just find Hex. Or even they find out about Hex, they stake, and then they realize there's PulseChain, and then they're like, oh, I get 2 chains I could have bought it on, right? So then maybe they go on PulseChain then, but still, I believe there's still going to be a little bit of a market for Hex for a few different scenarios. And maybe some people will just genuinely prefer Ethereum as well. Who knows, right? I mean, there's a whole whack of different reasons why someone would stay on eHEX potentially that I'm sure I can't even think of right now. So now that we've looked at some potentials for Ethereum Hex, let's check out PulseChain. PulseChain was designed with Hex users being the primary focus of Richard Hart's blockchain fork. It has cheaper fees, allowing smaller users to get on board when Ethereum had previously priced them out. This is huge because $100, well, this is only a handful of months ago. If you wanted to buy $100 in Hex, it cost you $100 in gas fees, and you spend $200 to buy $100 in Hex. It's insane. So theoretically, for the majority of people, if they find or are currently in Hex, PulseChain may be the ideal candidate. Assuming this is true, what will the price of Hex be compared to it on Ethereum? If PulseChain sees more smaller financial investors coming to the chain and staking, it is very possible that the price of Hex on PulseChain could climb high, possibly outpacing eHEX due to a higher money flow onto PulseChain. Just because more people have a financial situation that sets them up to be able to get smaller amounts or smaller investments, it seems likely that if people find out about Hex and they like it and they find out there's a cheaper way to do it that costs you less than a penny, even if PulseChain has already gone to $1, they're probably going to be more intrigued to go there than to Ethereum, right? So, and on top of that, many users are just sick and tired of Ethereum and just want to get off the network. When PulseChain comes out, many might bring their eHEX over to the PulseChain network. They just might say, I'm done. I don't want to be here. I just want to go over there. I don't want to deal with the fees. I don't want to pay like a half ETH or a full ETH for a long stake. You know, they might just decide they're just out, right? So what is this likely to do to the price? When a large sum of people bridge their eHEX to PulseChain, the price of PulseChain Hex is likely to rise. As it starts rising quickly, some people may not want to pay the high prices for Hex on PulseChain if eHEX is much lower, and they would lose out on their potential dollars invested per Hex, right? So though many may still see it as a good though many may still see it as a good investment, though many may still see it as a good investment considering the price may rise for a period of time above eHEX. So if this continues long term, another thing can happen. If the amount of stakers in Hex increase, remember Hex on PulseChain, this will mean that the APY, annual percentage yield of inflation that's paid to the stakers, if the amount of stakers in Hex, PulseChain Hex, increases, this will mean that the APY, the annual percentage yield of inflation you will get, will go down drastically. So if users stake for longer term on PulseChain, it may be unlikely that they will see the ROI in Hex they would have seen on Ethereum. Now that's only considering the amount of Hex you get per day, right? So, hold on. So if users stake for longer term on PulseChain, it may be unlikely that they will see the ROI in Hex they would have seen on Ethereum. However, the ROI in sheer increase in value of a single Hex token will drastically offset that. If the amount of stakers in Hex increases, this will mean that the APY, your annual percentage yield of inflation, the portion of the inflation, the yield that you get, will go down drastically. If users stake for longer term on PulseChain, it may be unlikely that they will see the ROI in Hex that they would have seen on Ethereum. However, the ROI in sheer increase in the value of a single Hex token will drastically offset that. So now let's take a look at some strategies, these 3 strategies for the different scenarios. Strategy number 1. If eHEX plays out like I have laid out, there could be less holders of eHEX than PulseChain Hex. So if we expect the price of Hex on PulseChain to be higher with significantly better price performance, shorter stakes may be the name of the game, as price performance of Hex may plateau at all-time highs sooner than Hex, meaning you're going to see more reward for your investment just from increase in dollar value alone. On Ethereum, longer stakes may be the best play because you're offsetting that lack of price performance with a very high daily payout per T-share, and you're getting the max possible bonus. So longer stakes are going to be from 10 years to 15 years. That's when you get the max possible bonus. But we're not done. So let's look at strategy number 2. Strategy 2 is another way to anticipate this outcome could be that both chains over time reach a similar price point. So for this outcome, it may be wise to stake for as long as you can before the launch of PulseChain. Staking ladders could be a plan if you really want yearly income, but stay tuned for number 3 for more on that. Now, by staking now, you are guaranteeing a lower T-share price for staking, as well as any fees from EES, or emergency end staking, on Ethereum and PulseChain. So if you're staking now and PulseChain launches, if people on Ethereum emergency end stake, you get some of those fees. If people emergency end stake on PulseChain because they got double their money and they need the money and they need cash out, you also get those fees on PulseChain. So it seems like a pretty good strategy as well. Stake long and just sit back and let it all happen, right? And finally, let's check out strategy number 3. If we expect the price of pHEX to be higher than eHEX faster, waiting until after the fork to do longer stakes could be beneficial. Here's why. If staking after the fork, assuming there are less holders of Ethereum Hex, the only way to offset the lack, not lock, of dollar per Hex increase is to stake for as long as possible, meaning because your price performance per Hex is not going up as fast as PulseChain, if this scenario happens, you need to somehow offset that to make sure you're still getting a similar gain. So this is by staking as long as possible, or at least 10 years. By staking max length, you are likely to get around a 6x increase in the amount of eHEX, so just the tokens themselves, over the life of the stake. And there's a caveat here, that's if the user percentage of staked Hex stays the same as today, so roughly around 9-10%. If that's the number we get over the course of the life of eHEX, we're roughly seeing around a 6x in how much Hex tokens you will have at the end of that stake. Is that likely? Probably not, but that will fluctuate. But you can think about that for how much of just sheer increase in your Hex alone you can achieve by just staking max length, right? So if you're thinking that you're likely to see price pump higher and faster on PulseChain, maybe a staking ladder is the way to go on that side while you've got your Hex staked for longer on Ethereum. So by creating stakes ending every year, you are able to get the best of both worlds of the maximum reward for delaying gratification on one chain and utilize the price increase on the other for yearly income. So to be clear, what I mean by staking ladder is if this strategy was the one that you chose, you would make a stake for 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and so on. And you could do this for any period. It can start higher, like doing from 10 through 15, or for 1 from 15, or like 7 through 12, or 2 to 7, whatever you want to do, doesn't matter. Or like 2 and then 3, or 4 and 5, or 5 and 6, or 1 and 2, or however you want to play it. But a staking ladder in itself, could be the way to play it if you are expecting the price to go much higher on the PulseChain side. Because that could be, if you need money to live and you want to start living soon and or living better soon and live off that money, and you want to utilize eHEX, which it does have, if you haven't seen on Twitter, if you're not following the Hex whale bot, I think it was in February, the God whale, as we call him, or her, or whoever, they staked about $200 million worth of Hex for 15 years. So they believe in the Ethereum chain. And there's a lot of people that have been staking longer and longer and longer. So all of this is speculation. So you need to think for yourself on what looks like will happen, what you predict will happen, maybe have a couple plans in place in case you see something start to play out, and really do your own research so that way when this plays out, you have a plan and you can execute and you're not left bamboozled and you miss out on opportunities, right? So really strategize here and plan exactly how you want to do it, because you could really make some great gains or set yourself up really, really well for the future by using some strategies like this or strategies you might have thought of that I haven't yet. So thank you so much for watching this video. I can't believe I'm about to say this because it's been 2 weeks, but we just hit 1,000 subscribers like in 2 weeks. I'm literally shocked. This is incredible. Like, holy, I don't know what to do about it. I just like, it's so fast. Thank you. Like, this is incredible. I love all of you. I appreciate every single one of you that's watched these videos, that's left me a comment. That's just incredible. I'm blown away. So guys, follow me on Twitter at Cryptographics. I'm going to be posting a little more on there. I'm trying to get better at it, trying to balance the making these videos and making sure I'm active on there with you guys so I can communicate with you. And please, like, drop me a comment if you liked the video, if you disagreed. I want to know your thoughts. If you thought of something else, if I missed something, if I messed something up, please just leave me a comment. And also, if you love the video, love for you to subscribe. So guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.